1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to our second bonus episode on finance on your biweekly dose of Black love. My name is Ellyn for E.
And my name is Paul for P. For those of you tuning in for the first time, we decided to start this podcast to celebrate a milestone in our relationship. 35 years of wedded bliss, and as of April 22nd, 2026, it has been 37 years. Every other week, we'll share a part of our relationship with you so you can see what has brought us this far and will take us further. Before we get into today's episode, let's start with a moment of gratitude. I am grateful for life. I am grateful that I got up this morning and was able to look into the eyes of my beautiful wife, Ellyn. And I'm grateful that I'm still walking around this earth, being able to write and read and be around people that I love and care for. Ellyn, what are you grateful for, or what do you have gratitude?
I am grateful that we are working on creative projects because in our parenting working journey, there was no time. It wasn't even a thought. It was raise the kids, eat the food, go to work. So it's nice to have time to breathe, and hopefully we'll be traveling we'll be traveling shortly and creating episodes and new life journeys to share with our ESaysPSays crew.
All right. Thank you so much, Ellyn.
Previously, we discussed marriage and financial growth in season 2, episode 13. If you missed it, take a listen. I am sure you will enjoy that heated discussion because it has taken us almost our whole marriage to save money without a fight breaking out. And if you're a newbie, welcome. And please subscribe so you can catch up and listen to all of our episodes. This week, we will continue our discussion of finances with the second part of our interview with Michael Collison.
So today we welcome our cousin, Michael Collison. Michael recently retired from careers in software engineering and finance. At the age of 50, he started seriously evaluating what retirement might look like and realized major changes were needed if he wanted financial freedom. After reviewing his financial or retirement projection, he developed a strategy that eventually allowed him to retire at the age of 58. Now, he shares what he learned to help others prepare financially for the future. He's been married for 30 years, is a father of 3, a grandfather, and according to him, everybody's favorite cousin, nephew, and friend. So today, we're interviewing Michael to help both us and our listeners better understand finances and retirement planning.
So, back again with his winning personality and expertise on the financial industry, we welcome Michael Collison.
So for those that may not have listened to the previous episode, can you go into a little of your background for us, Mr. Collison?
Sure, absolutely, not a problem. I am a retired software engineer. Wrote code for probably around 40 years, and I would say my interest in finance developed around the year, around the year 2000 when we had the .com crash. The internet had taken off, and then there were all these .com companies, and I was watching CNBC, and I remember being at work in the late 90s and was working at this small startup. And I remember at lunchtime, all my colleagues would be in the lunchroom looking at CNBC. And I remember being like really intimidated by it and like, oh my God, I had a 401k, but I wasn't buying individual stocks. And I remember one of my colleagues was like, Mike, just open an account. And I remember him sitting there helping me open their account. I'm in my early 30s. And I bought, I bought some. And I remember I put like $5,000 in this thing in maybe '98, and then it was worth like $30,000 a couple years later. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
"What in the world?" I mean, it was insane. And then the dot-com bubble comes in. It's like I lost all. Probably went back to maybe break even or a slight gain,
Right.
and I didn't know what to do. I was just completely paralyzed.
Mm.
And being the engineer that I am, I'm like, oh no, we can't do this again. It's like, no, no, this is a problem to be solved. And that sort of set me off on my sort of journey to understanding the financial markets. But what I still didn't understand at the time was that, I was thinking, okay, investing is one thing and it's completely separate from your budget, and saving is something else. And I realized that it's really more of a pyramid, in my opinion, where your budget needs to be the foundation of the pyramid. That if you don't have that right, nothing else is going to be right. And a simple example would be there were multiple times when I was quote unquote investing, but then I would have to sell stocks because I was spending too much of my budget.
Wow.
That's pretty basic, right?
Yeah.
And that happened multiple times. And that's why I keep coming back to this, that, people say, well, I'm saving this much money. And I'm like, well, how do you know you can afford to save?
Right.
And how do you know you can afford to save 500? How do you know it's not 1,500? How do you know it's not 100?
Right.
How do you know it? How do you know it's zero? Well, if you don't have a budget, you don't know.
Yeah.
And then also, well, what are you saving for, and why are you saving? So I really feel like, and this probably comes back to my engineer training, is like we need to take a step back and see the forest for the trees, because one of the things that I remember doing, and a lot of my clients do this, is people say, "Oh, I have to put this money in a savings account over here because I have to hide it for myself." And what I understand, right, and that probably resonates with you, right? And the
Yeah.
reason you have to hide it from yourself is you don't actually have a designated job for the money.
Right.
Like if you knew, hey, this money is going to be for a medical procedure that I need to do in 9 months, would you spend the money? No. You'd be like, I need this $10,000 because I need to have this life-saving surgery. And it doesn't matter if the money's sitting in your checking or your savings account.
Uh-huh.
The reason people tap the money in their savings account is it actually doesn't really have a designated job. They say it does, but it really doesn't. So that for me was something that was really powerful. So all of those things that I just mentioned are really kind of what set me off on my journey to,
Right.
financial independence and all this stuff. So hopefully that helps.
All right. So thanks so much. So what we're going to do, we're going to continue where we left off. Is that good with you?
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Session.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a couple of questions, and the first one was, or is, when is that actually okay or beneficial?
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, first of all, it's certainly a personal decision. Um, but the way I look at it, so for example, the only debt that I have is a mortgage on my house.
Okay.
And one of the reasons I'm okay with the debt is the interest rate is so low, 2.75, that
Right.
I can actually make more money investing than I could paying it off.
Okay.
So imagine that you've got a mortgage and the balance of it is $100,000, right?
Right.
And let's say that you have $100,000 cash just sitting around, and you're trying to make this decision of, man, I could just take the 100 grand and pay it off, and my note is gone. Okay.
Right.
Versus I could take that same 100 grand and put it in the market,
Mhm.
and also assume that you have a long-term horizon, like you don't need it for any short-term thing. Well,
Right.
then I would argue that the 8% average return on the market, 8% is greater than 2.75%, isn't it? Which is what I
Absolutely.
have now. So why would I not get 8% per year compounded versus 2.75%? So to me, there's an example where for me, the debt is actually okay, because I can actually make more money than I would by paying off the debt. And by the way, this is actually what banks do.
Right.
Banks take your savings, you put money in your savings or your checking account, they pay you a measly bit of interest, and then they loan it out 8%, 9%. So that 9% minus whatever they have to pay you is their profit. Well, that's kind of the way I'm looking at this. That's what banks do. So that's one area where I think it's okay to do that.
Right. Okay.
And then for me, the second part of it is a house can be, it's not necessarily, it can be an appreciating asset.
Right.
So for me, it can be okay to take out debt for an appreciating asset. Well, let's talk about the other type of debt that we typically do, a car loan. Well, cars depreciate in value. Of course, the credit cards and all the things that we put on credit cards, right? Almost none of those things are appreciating assets, right? And so if you're going to sit there, and to me, it's never smart to sit there and pay 28% to go and fly to the Bahamas for a week.
Right. Yeah.
If you don't have the money.
Right.
Look, I've done it. I just don't think it's I don't think it's challenging to do. I think the best use of debt is if you can either acquire an asset, or let's say you're going to go into business, but then you have to make sure you've done your homework. Because a lot of people go into debt and they say, well, I'm starting my business. But guess what? We know most businesses fail. And people will go into $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 of debt with their small business. Then 4 or 5 years later, the business is not showing any profit. They eventually stop, and that. And I argue with people all the time and say, you know what? If you want to truly invest in a business, because that we hear that on social media all the time.
Yeah.
Why don't you just go buy the S&P 500?
Huh.
You're now invested in 500 businesses, and you don't have to be an expert in any of them. And those businesses are being run, hopefully, to the best of their ability. And here you are, you're just a shareholder collecting value. Asset is appreciating, whatever, as opposed to you doing all this grunt work of running the business. Because most businesses are going to fail, or most businesses are never going to get to be as successful as something like, let's say, like that's in the S&P 500. It's just not going to happen. So
the way you put that, the way you put that, I never thought about it that way. Now, I don't think most people think about it that way.
Right.
That's why I just think this podcast, and I'm glad that we're delving into this, because I don't think most people really look at the way that you look at this stuff. And I think it's important, particularly in the Black community, that we learn more about finance and how to manage finance. Our finance. I had a friend, I don't want to go too far off topic. I had a friend spoke to me last night. And so you know what he said to me? He said, well, your podcast is not salacious.
Right.
What's the purpose of your podcast? So I said,
right.
Our podcast is to teach. That's the purpose of the podcast.
It's to what? It's to what?
To teach.
To teach. Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So Mark Naylor, he had a special guest come on like you, just to teach people about certain topics. I think yes, of course, our overall umbrella is Black love, but then underneath that, why not teach about others that are going on, are happening?
Yeah.
So then I said that, he kind of understood. Oh, yeah. I never looked at it that way. He said, I said,
that's a problem. That's a problem.
Right. But why does why does everything have to be so innocent? You see, it's not internet. Everything's got to be, and everything's got to be monetized. Yes, I'm a true believer. I have faith, and I know that if you're doing right, it's like my grandmother say, Mike, if you're doing right, things will work out. And people will. This information is so valuable. So you imagine a young person listening to this at 20.
Yeah,
what that could start for that young person, or what kind of questions that person could have in their mind about how to do certain things with money. Or people might be contacting you. You could get business. So there's a lot of different positives. So I want to just say, not to go off topic too far, because sometimes I have a tendency of going rails. but just wanted to say that. Can I get another question? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep going.
Okay, so this is a question I have, or we have. How should someone approach paying off large debt?
Mm,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
That's a mhm,
avalanche.
yeah. So I actually have a completely different take on paying off the debt,
Okay.
and and I learned this. So I think I mentioned it in the last one. I use a budgeting program called You Need a Budget, and I'm a certified coach. And the most important thing that I learned for becoming a certified coach is you actually don't necessarily need to attack the debt first. I'm not saying you don't need to attack, and I know that sounds like heresy, right? Because people are like, "Well, geez, I'm in 25 or $50,000 worth of debt, and oh my God, I have to address this." The problem with it is, and again, debt consolidation industry, right? You got to, you have billions of dollars in debt, and you have thousands of these debt consolidation companies, and they're all promising you the moon, right? And my question is, if these guys were actually solving problems, why are so many people still in debt?
Yeah.
And the answer, and the answer is they're not treating the problem. They're treating the symptom. The symptom is the debt. The problem is overspending. If you are $50,000 in debt and I give somebody $50,000 to pay it off tomorrow, but that person is spending $1,000 more than they bring in every month, let me ask you a question. Where are they going to be 2 or 3 years from now?
Back in that same situation.
Right. So they're not, so that's what I'm saying here is that the best way to get out of debt is to stop overspending. So if you stop the bleeding by stop and my wife and I did this, when we started using wine, we were in debt. I mean, it wasn't massive debt, but to me the amount of debt actually doesn't matter because the more important thing to do is to stop the bleeding.
Right.
Right? The more debt you're in, yes, it's going to take longer. However, if you stop the bleeding, if you stop overspending, you don't go into new debt. And that's the real issue. The
Mhm.
real issue is new debt or piled on new debt, piled on new debt. If you stop overspending, then you can look at the old debt as, okay, man, this $50,000 here, man, this looks like a big pile. But you know what? I'm not making it any worse because I now have my budget under control. I'm bringing in 5 grand. We're spending 4,500. All right, maybe now we got an extra 500 to send towards the debt.
Right.
What do most people do? They say, "Oh my God," and I've seen this multiple times with my clients. They're like, "Mike, we're gonna move all the money from our savings. We're gonna pay off the cards, and we're gonna see you in 2 weeks, and everything's gonna be great. We're gonna start from scratch." And then I see them in 2 weeks, and the debt is still there. It's just new debt. So what's happened is they've they took their savings, by the way, which was supposed to be for things like emergency and home improvement,
Okay.
and paid off the credit card debt. That's problem number one, right? And then, but what they don't realize is, but there's new debts coming. Not only that,
Mm.
a lot of times they're taking money out of their checking account and they've been using the credit cards to subsidize their life.
Right.
So you don't have all of this extra money that you think you have. You really need to choose between, all right, I'm going to use this. I've got $3,000 in my bank account. All right, what do I need to pay first? All right, I got to take care of my rent. I got to take care of my groceries. I got to take care of my utilities. You know what happens with that? For a lot of people after that, there's not much left over.
Right.
And now you have to start making some hard decisions like, oh my goodness, I can only send a minimum amount of money to the credit card company, right? And so most people get distraught over that. And I say to them, but what if you just look at that as a lesson? Meaning, yep, you're going to pay extra interest, but that's the lesson, and you need to let that lesson breathe, and you need to learn that and absorb that lesson. And then the second thing you then do is say, okay, now we need to look at our spending. We need to look at our income. Where are some things that we can do? And I don't mean cutting, $25 worth of subscription or no. If you're in that much debt, you've got to look at major lifestyle changes. You might need to move.
Right.
You might need to sell your house. You might need to sell your car. You're right. You got to make some really big, tough decisions. You may need to look for a better job, right? But But the expense side of it is the first part that you have to attack and address, which is you got to stop overspending. You now have to underspend and address that part first. Then you can attack the debt, if that makes sense. So I'm
Yes.
arguing snowball versus avalanche is the smallest part of it, because then once you actually have some extra savings, then you can go with snowball, avalanche, depending on your personality. You might have $50,000 over 10 cards. And for some people, it might be better to say, you know what, I'm going to attack the card that's got $2,000 first because I want small wins. Whereas other people are like, no, mathematically, it's better to do the avalanche. I'm saying that's such a small part of it. The bigger part of it is you have to address the fact that most people that are in large amounts of debt are overspending every month, and they're using the credit cards to subsidize their lifestyle, or home equity loans, or home equity line of credit, all these kinds of things.
Mm.
So I'm saying you have to address those things first, then the debt becomes easier, because think about this. If you stop digging, if you stop putting new stuff on the cards, then all right, I got 50K worth of debt, but I'm not making it worse. Yep, the interest is there, but if I can start chipping away at it slowly, if I can, maybe the first month I can only send an extra 50. Maybe the next month I can send an extra 200. You'll be surprised at how quickly you can get down that debt.
Yeah.
But right, so that's the way I look at it.
It's about consistency.
It's about consistency, and it's really about understanding. You know, most people delude themselves into thinking, and this is how you get into debt. They'll say, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna take this trip to the Bahamas, and I'm gonna put it on the credit card." And they say, "But I'm gonna pay it off with your next check." And that's the first lie, and that's how
Right.
it starts. You're not gonna pay it off because your next check is already spoken for,
Right. Absolutely.
and then slowly but surely, that's how it happens.
Yeah.
Just one expense at a time, and then you don't have the money, and your credit card company says, "It's fine, it's fine. Just send the $50," just like the drug dealer. It's like, "Oh, it's fine, it's fine." And then before you know it, you're hooked.
Yeah. That's true. So, Michael, let me ask this question: Is there a beginner-friendly way to start investing when when you first you
Mhm. Yeah.
uh should you do a 401? Is 401k a good thing to do for some people?
Mhm.
Or 401
Yeah.
if you're a teacher like I am?
Yeah. So for me, anybody that has any sort of um, career, you
Mhm.
to me, the first thing you should do is, yeah, you want to have that 401k, 403b. I mean, they're all the same thing. They're just called different things depending on whether you're in the private sector or the public sector or pension. So to me, that's the first thing you should do. And
Right.
then you want to take advantage. If your company or your organization has a match, you absolutely want to be at least at that level, right? So to me, that's the first basic thing. But here's where I think a lot of people stop, and this is where I think a lot of the failures come is, um, let's say you're 25, 30 years old, and you're maxing out your 401k,
Mhm.
but you're not doing anything else.
Right.
The problem with that is there's this little thing called inflation. Okay. And inflation, depending on who you're talking to, the government will tell you it's around 3%, but we know when we actually look at our bills, it's more than that. It's probably more in the 5 to 6% range.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yes.
if you agree with me on that, most companies, most organizations are not giving you a 5 to 6% raise per year.
Absolutely not.
No.
So you get a 3% raise, but your cost of living goes up by 5% per year. What's the problem with that? You have a 2% gap.
Right.
Then you have a 2% gap the year after that. Then you have another 2% gap. It's not you don't have a 2% gap. The gap is actually compounding and getting bigger.
Right.
Does that make sense? So
Yes.
the question is, where does that extra money come from?
Hmm.
Right. So what do most people do? After a while, most people feel it and they're like, well, let me go get a second job. But
Yeah.
then what they do is then they go drive an Uber, and they don't actually do the real math, because by the time you drive it and put the gas in it and then set money aside for all the repairs, because you're now going to drive 50,000 miles a year, your car is going to be your car is not going to be worth anything in 3 years, right? You're going to put 150,000 miles on your car in 3 years. it's depreciated. It's not worth anything. And then let's not even talk about the tires, the brakes, all of that stuff, right?
Right.
When you when you factor in all of those costs, you're barely making any money.
That's true. You
And
might be.
so, yeah, you might be in the red, right? And people don't do things like, I didn't know this, but if you drive Uber, you're actually supposed to have a different type of insurance. If you're driving Uber and you just have your regular insurance, your regular insurance, and this is just an aside, will not cover an accident.
I did not know that.
Hmm.
It's not
Yeah,
aware.
they will not cover it. They will not cover it. If you are operating a business
Right.
and you decide to start driving Uber tomorrow, your insurance company will not pay for that accident.
E. Wow.
So now you're going to get this extra insurance, and guess what? Now that's eating into your profits. Eating into your profits, right? So all of those things. So now let's get back to investing. But what if you took a different tack and said, okay, I know that my job is going to average 3% a year. But what if I, instead of, no, I shouldn't say, well, let me not say instead of, but what if I actually now go and open an investing account? And the purpose of my investing account is to beat inflation, because I know I'm losing out to inflation 2 or 3% a year.
Right.
What if I now open an account to say that the job of this investing account is to help me keep up with inflation for the next 20 or 30 years that I'm going to be working? What if you did that instead of going and getting quote unquote a first side hustle, a second side hustle, a third side hustle, killing yourself? What if you open an account and you just let the money work for you?
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? So to me, the 401k is the basic thing that we need to do. But the real things that we need to do are, we need to really understand, and again, this gets back to the budget. What are our costs actually going to be?
Yeah. I don't think really most people really realize what they're
And
called.
right. Because most people just look at what's in front of their face. But to me, inflation is the worst. It's the silent killer. And you really see it when people retire.
Yeah.
When, I see this on various um, job boards. You'll hear seniors say, but I'm on fixed income,
Right.
but I'm on fixed income.
Right.
The problem is this country doesn't care about you being on fixed income,
It's true.
and your expenses are going to go up.
They don't-
And you're not going to you're not going to be able to sign enough petitions to keep them from going up on your taxes, going up on your water bill, your electricity bill, your gas bill. All this stuff is going to go up. It's not even a question. So then we have to invest like we understand that.
Right. Right. True.
So for me, yeah, the 401k is the easiest thing to do. But the most important thing to do from investing is you must understand, what are you investing for? You're not just investing, you're investing for something. You're investing for your children's college savings. You're investing for your retirement. You're investing to buy a house. You're not just putting $100 away into an account. You have to understand what you're investing for. To me, that's the most critical thing. Am I investing for one thing? Am I investing for 5 things? How much do I need to be putting in there? How far away is my goal? Those are the kind of questions that you need to be asking yourself.
So that segues right into my next question.
Okay.
So what are some common investing myths you wish people
What are
would
some?
stop?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, so one that I've heard a lot in our community is, if you just invest in Bitcoin, you're going to get generational wealth.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Right. And Bitcoin is a way for marginalized communities to make money because we've been locked out of stuff, right? And so the thing about lies like that is they're kind of half truths, in the sense that marginalized communities, it is true, have in the past been kept out or kept from doing certain things, right? Um, but I say to people that just push Bitcoin, well, what keeps you from opening a brokerage account at Charles Schwab or E-Trade? Nothing. What keeps you from buying shares of Apple or Microsoft? Nobody's keeping you from doing that.
Right.
And why? And what is it about Bitcoin that makes it more attractive than those? And I know what the answer is. People are looking at those past returns of 200% a year, 500% a year. And it turns out that people are desperate. And what people really want is they want a lottery ticket.
Right.
They want 500% a year for 8 years straight so that they can retire, but that don't happen.
Right.
And so that's one of the big myths is that just put all your money into Bitcoin or something like that, or the latest lottery ticket, and that people don't diversify themselves. So I'm not saying that it's the worst thing in the world to have a little bit of Bitcoin. What I'm saying is you want a diversified account.
Okay. Right. Thank you so much for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna jump in now, and I think you've answered this as you go through the previous questions. What's more important, cutting expenses or increasing income? And I think you answered that a bit
Right.
in this one as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll speak to it just really quickly. I mean, I think expenses first. I'm not saying not to do both, but the reason I say expenses is that's something that you can do immediately. You may not be able to increase your income immediately.
That's true. That's true.
So what about those people who argue, Mr. Collison, that they can't cut their expenses immediately? I'm just saying. I'm just playing devil's advocate for this.
Yeah, I understand. So for me, it comes down to what do you want to do, and what I mean by that is, again, I don't want anybody to hear that. Oh my God, I had it together from the beginning. I didn't have it together for decades. Okay.
Right.
There were periods of time where I'd be good, but then there'd be periods of time when I'd be bad. And the first thing that you have to address is your mindset and like, what do you actually believe? What do you actually want? What I mean by that is I remember graduating college and I remember believing this whole thing about you work hard, you play hard, which essentially meant spend all your money. And one of the reasons people say they can't cut expenses is we as Americans feel entitled to a lot of things that we do. Well, I can't cut HBO, Disney, Hulu. You know, you guys sit there, you got 15 subscriptions, but you're $25,000 in debt. I'm sorry, but or we got to go on vacation. My philosophy is if you in that much debt, you got to cut.
Yeah.
You got to cut. Or you should strongly consider. Let me not say you have. You should strongly consider non-discretionary things. And we as Americans are spoiled. We are. Listen, you have immigrants come over here making less money and they're surviving on their own and sending money back home to help their parents and get people over here. We are so spoiled. We really are. Oh, I can't get rid of my $800 a month Tesla. Really? Seriously?
Or
yeah.
I don't want a roommate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't do all of these things. So a lot of the I can't cut. A lot of it is a mindset thing in terms of what we've become entitled to. To me, if you're in a lot of debt, the question you have to ask yourself is, well, how badly do you want to get out of it? If you don't want to change it, then it's fine. For me, what got me to the point, everybody has their why. What got me to the point was health, where I had a lot of health challenges, especially headaches, and the stress of just thinking about that. And finally, I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to do it anymore. And so everybody has to have their why. It's not enough, in my opinion, to say, we really ought to get our budget together. You need to have a deep why, because if you don't, what I found is that people will start on this journey, but a lot of times when they actually see that they have to make wholesale changes, a lot of people don't want to do them. They don't do them.
I concur. We've had those conversations ourselves.
Mhm.
And how can people negotiate their salary effectively? I guess that because I we're all in the same age group. There was no negotiating. They said we're gonna pay you this, and we'll see you later. Now,
Well, my view on that was I didn't negotiate salary. I just left. Like I said, seriously, I didn't. Right, because I mean, you're negotiating with people. Like I said, the average raise is probably 3%. So okay, maybe if you negotiate, you get 4, maybe 5. Whereas for me, I was a mercenary, and I was like, especially in the private sector, I was like, no, I'm gonna leave and get 15%. I'm not gonna sit here and mess with you and have a discussion about 1 or 2%. To me, that didn't make sense.
That's
So
true.
for me, that's one approach, right? You generally, assuming a healthy job market can get significantly more simply by leaving, or finding a better job. The second one is you have to understand your value, right? So people want to sit there, like I said, and you want, oh, I want to get another one or two. But the question is, no one ever asked themselves, well, how valuable am I to the company?
That's true.
You're right.
The value of a brain surgeon to a hospital is higher than a general practitioner,
Yeah.
because a hospital can charge more. There might not be a lot of brain surgery, but brain surgery is expensive.
Yes.
So, I hate to be that cutthroat, but the reality is most
Right.
people have never even sat and thought about, what value do I bring to a company? I'm sorry, but if your job is French fries, you're not that valuable, because I get anybody to do French fries. And I'm not trying to demean anybody. Work is work. I'm just talking about, if you're actually talking about saying, hey, I want an extra $10,000 a year. Well, then if you want an extra $10,000 a year, or you bring an extra $100,000 worth of value, right? You have to sit down and then you have to actually ask yourself why. There's a if if people really want to get into it, there's a book called, Business Model You, um, and it comes out of another set of books where, about business models for corporations, where, um, and let me make this more concrete. Imagine, let's go back in time to the late 90s, when Blockbuster Video was on top. Okay. Everybody would go to Blockbuster maybe on Friday or Saturday, and we're going to get a video. Okay. And Blockbuster had a captive market. Then Netflix came in, and Netflix competed with Blockbuster by saying no late fees. But you were still shipping DVDs back and forth, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a business model. It's not just, I'm doing this. There's a business model. Netflix had to actually organize themselves around shipping DVDs, and we're going to accept the losses even if the video is a month later. There's a whole business model around doing it. They had to have shipping and supply chain management around doing that. Then Netflix changed the business model and said, why are we shipping DVDs when there's this thing called the internet, and we can deliver the video over the internet?
Yeah.
We don't need stores. And now Blockbuster is still in the same business model of having physical stores and distributing the physical video. Whereas Netflix said, no, we're going to change that. And instead of doing shipping and all logistics, what we're going to do is we're going to have to hire tech experts, right? And people that know how to set up servers all over the country and all over the world. And we're going to have to make agreements with studios. That's a completely different business model. We need lawyers. We need people that can negotiate. And what did they do? They destroyed Blockbuster by creating a new business model, a brand new way of delivering content. But at the end of the day, what are they delivering? Movies and TV shows. That's what they deliver.
Yeah.
But so now take that same idea and take that down to a person. Well, again, if my business model is I'm going to go to medical school, and become a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon, you can't be mad at that person and say, well, why are they able to get $500,000 a year? Well, they looked at the landscape and said, what kind of things are valuable to society? You can't say that. We know what teachers are going to make. It doesn't mean that teachers are not valuable,
Right.
but that our society values different types of careers differently than other things. So the first thing you need to do is take a step back and say, well, what am I doing, and and how valuable is it?
True.
If your skill set is a commodity, you can't think it's reasonable that you have negotiating leverage.
Absolutely.
The people that have negotiating leverage are people who have scarce skills that are in demand. It's literally a supply and demand thing, right?
Yes. That's even true in the school system. Because, compared to a general educator, if you do a comparison between a general educator and a special educator,
Right.
Special educators are a lot more scarce. So therefore, they're more valuable because within the school system, because there's not many of them. And then if you break it down even further to men, having male special educators, other even subgroup that
Exactly.
that brings
Right.
value to a school,
Right.
our system.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a great point. Like,
Yeah. So I look at it that way. Like, if you have skills that are in demand, so you shouldn't even have to negotiate, right? It's like, this is what I'm worth. If you don't, then now you're, sitting here playing around with, oh, I deserve a 4% versus a 3%. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but I'm arguing, I'm always all about the bigger picture.
we don't want people putting themselves in situations where they're burning down warehouses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
that person did in California because they were frustrated about
Mhm.
their pay. So,
Right.
we don't want that kind of situation going on.
Mm-mm.
Whoosh.
That's a loaded topic. That was a loaded topic.
But it makes sense, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
It does. And and I guess as I'm listening, a lot of these conversations just didn't take place. And then I'm the only woman in the room. So I think sometimes some of the jobs that were available, you weren't asked, you didn't consider your value. You were getting out there to, in the time I grew up, most of the time, my mother was getting out to help the household, not to be the sole provider.
Mm-hmm.
That's a difference. So I'm looking at her as my model when I should have been looking at maybe a single woman as the model or a younger woman and seeing that this person is going in with their value. Okay, yeah, they're just a secretary, but they may be the best secretary. So it's like, well, if you can't pay me this, I'll see you later. Somebody else will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
And you also, the other part is you have to understand, how does the market value you, right?
yeah,
It's like, when people go to sell houses, my sister sells real estate, and she's always telling me about people are, but I guess for lack of a better word, they are optimistic, let's say, in terms of, they're like, oh, I can sell a house for 500,000, but the market says it's worth 400.
Right.
yeah.
But I did an upgrade to a kitchen. The market doesn't care. The market says it's worth 400,000. The people are like, well, I'm just going to wait. Okay. All right. Well, that's going to cost you time. And so one of the things we've got to do is we've got to be realistic in that. And it's kind of cutthroat and brutal, but the market won't tell you what your value is.
That's true.
Yeah, that is true.
Mhm.
The next question, there's two more questions, but they kind of go into each other, and I think you touched on them also. So I'll just answer them together. What are underrated ways to create additional income streams? And then how do you evaluate whether a side hustle is worth it? And I
Yeah.
think go back to the budget
Mhm.
and not
Yeah.
do those.
Yeah. For me, um, in this capitalist system and the way things are going now, to me, the most underrated way to get an extra income stream is investing in assets. People feel like you have to actually be doing something, right? They talk about passive income, but when you actually look at what most people talk about as passive income, it's actually work. To actually have you doing things, but passive income doesn't require you to do additional work.
This is
Mm.
Oh, passive, passive, passive. And they got you stuffing envelopes and doing this and doing that and going around to people's houses. I'm like, that's not passive income. So, again, like, and my son is a great example of this. Last year, it was his last year of him getting his master's degree. And his mother and I had told him, I was like, hey, we're not gonna be handling this. You need to handle this. Well, he didn't believe it. He didn't believe this, and he came to me last summer. He goes, "Hey, Dad, so can you transfer the money into my account so I can, pay my bill?" And I'm like, "What money, son?"
that's
Like he didn't believe it. So and I knew it was going to take that to get his attention. So one of the things I said to him, he finally realized, "Oh my God, what do I have to do?" He started scrambling, and I said, "Okay." I said, "Let's gather up your liabilities and your assets." And one of the assets that he had overlooked was I had opened a brokerage account for him. And I said, "Here's what we're gonna do." And I don't know. I think I started it with $200 or $300, and I said, "We're gonna put $25 a month for you in there." And it was, he had little odd jobs here and then, so he just kept doing it and doing it. But he wasn't focused on it because he was like, that's just $25 a month." So one of the things I said to him, I said, "Let's look at this account." And he had about $1,800 in there.
Mm.
And I said, "You need to spend that $1,800 to defray the cost of your tuition."
Mm.
Well, he didn't have to do anything for that thing to get to $1,800. Do you understand my point?
Yeah,
He was
right.
just sitting there putting $25 a month there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so for me, that's the most underlooked thing, is that people don't understand. Like if you look at, we supposedly want to look at, these rich people and how smart they are. Well, I think I said this on last podcast. When you look at the compensation packages of the wealthiest, let's say CEOs, let's just take Tim Cook from Apple. 85% of his total compensation is Apple stock.
Yeah.
Why? Because he'd be an idiot to take $30 million in salary. Why would he be an idiot? Because if he takes $30 million in salary, the government is going to destroy him in taxes.
Yes.
So he takes $2 or $3 million in salary, and then he gets $30 million in Apple stock, which a year, not over time, a year.
Whoa! So like he's a billionaire.
Oh, absolutely. And let's understand something. And he don't need to spend that $30 million. So Tim Cook just sits there and banks that, right?
Yeah, that
And then as long as he holds it for more than a year, whenever he sells it, let's say he goes and he sells $10 million worth of it, the max he's going to pay on that, because it's not income.
Right.
It's not income. It's capital gains. As long as he's held it for a year or longer, it's 20%.
He's smart.
wow.
So you ask me, what is the best way to make additional income? The best way to make additional income is investing in assets. But we don't think about a asset whose value is growing as income.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is true.
Listen to what I said. Remember I told you my son's thing started off with $200 or $300. He put $2,500 away, and then it was worth $1,800 down the road. Why isn't that income? Why isn't an asset that has grown in value income? Because we don't think of it as, it's not being deposited into our account. We only think of things, we think of cash or something deposited into our bank account as income. We don't think of an asset as income. But if I say, well, just sell some shares in your Apple stock and it's in your account in 3 days, isn't that income?
Yeah, it is.
So, but why do we think of it as income? Because we've been taught like good little robots that the only kind of income is side hustles where you see immediate money.
Yeah,
that's true.
And so what I'm saying to you is, Elon Musk went from being worth nothing to being the richest man in the world inside of 15 years. And all of that wealth is tied to his Tesla stock, all of it. All of it. The salary that he makes is a rounding error compared to the value of his Tesla stock. It's a rounding error. They just gave him a $1 trillion stock option package.
Wow. My only question is, when you have so much of your monetary value, I mean, yes, they're giving you, a couple of million as a salary in cash, but we've seen the market drop, like in the what is it, the early 2000s when the .com. What happens when that happens? I mean, they're not going to feel it like you or I, but they'll feel it.
Sure, but here's what I'm saying to you. There's always, people think that if you are going to be wealthy, you have to take risk. There's different types of risk. You could start a business. Well, when you start a business, there's all kinds of risks. There's competition. You got to borrow money. People don't like your product. People don't like your service. That's a risk. Put your money in the market. The market could go down. That's a risk. You tie yourself to a company. They might lay you off. There's a risk. What am I saying? You can't avoid risk.
Okay.
You can't avoid risk. You say, well, I don't want to be exposed to the risk of the market, so I'll keep my money in my savings account and I'll earn 0.01% a year. But the value of your dollar goes down every year because inflation goes up by 5% a year. So yes, you technically do still have that $1,000 sitting in your account. 5 years later, that $1,000 only buys $850 worth of stuff. See the problem? You cannot avoid risk in life. You cannot. You are always taking on risk. The question you have to ask is, what risk am I willing to take?
Okay.
Because despite, you're talking about the market being down. If we have hundreds of years of data on the stock market, and the bottom line is to all of it, to World War I, World War II, the Civil War, Kennedy's assassination, the dot-com bubble, the 2008 financial crisis, the COVID crash, Trump's tariffs, this latest stuff with the Iran war. Well, guess what happened? The S&P 500 just went to a brand new high on Friday.
Yeet.
So you tell me. And in the meantime, layoffs are spreading across the country. So you tell me, what risk do you want to take?
Well, I guess now I'll go get some S&P 500 stocks.
But
Couple of put it in your back pocket.
So let me ask you this. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna hand it back to the Mister. He's so ready. We talk about this is your favorite topic and his.
Okay.
So let me ask you this question. So what's the most expensive financial mistake you've made?
Yeah.
And if it's too personal,
No, it's not too. I'm just trying to think. There's two of them I can think of. I would say that the most expensive financial mistake I've made is taking money out of my 401k. And I'm gonna tell you why. The reason is, if you take something out in your 20s or your 30s, you miss out on 20 to 30 years of compounding. You might say, I'm only taking out $5,000 or $10,000, but by taking that out, you might have $100,000 less in retirement. Take out $50,000, you might actually have $300,000 less by the time you get to retirement. You see how expensive that is?
Yeah.
I'm going to bed now.
So for me, I would say that's probably the most. I would probably say followed up by paying the interest that you pay on those credit cards.
Okay.
But I would definitely say, I still think, though, in absolute dollar terms, it's probably pulling money out of my 401k. And once again, why did I pull it out? To pay expenses, because I wasn't budgeting, because I would not limit myself to the income that I was taking.
Right. And you talked about, some of the mistakes that you even see smart people make and successful people. So we've covered that. How can someone recover from a major financial setback?
You got to be willing to be honest, and you have to be willing to look at everything, and you have to be willing to look at, okay, this is where I am, this is where we are. This is where we need to try to get to, right? But the most critical thing is just being honest. And the reason I say that is, again, when my wife and I first started, truly budgeting, is I didn't want to start because I didn't want to open the credit card statements. I didn't want to see. I didn't want to see what I had done. And again, it wasn't anything crazy.
Right.
It was probably somewhere between 5, but I didn't want to look at it because when you go and you make those minimum payments, here's what most people do: they log into the website, and they take a quick peek and say, oh, $75. Okay, I'm gonna send them $75. They don't look at the balance because they don't want to look at the balance. They don't look at the interest that's being charged because they don't want to look. So the biggest thing that you can do is you have to look. You got to stop digging. You got to say, well, what can I do about this? What assets do I have? What resources do I have to help me get out of this? Right. So for me, that's the most important thing that you can do. You got to tell the truth.
True. Mr. Collison, we are done with this segment.
Okay.
All right. I really appreciate you so much.
Okay.
The segment, can you give us your information again, Mr. Collison?
Yeah, if people want to know more about me, they can just go to yourfirejourney.coach. And if they want to send an email, they can reach me at that same domain. It's just michael@yourfirejourney.coach. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I will put that information in this segment's show notes as well. And I'll also is the website is the yourfirejourney.coach. That's the website.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll put that in there as well. And again, thank you so much. After this episode, I'm taken to the bed, as I said. Because as soon as you said that about the 401k, Paul, I just looked at you and said, I was like, damn. But we enjoyed it. I put it, we had a good time at the time.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, man. Yeah, love you too, brother.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you so much. Disclaimer, we are not therapists or financial experts. We're simply sharing lessons from our crazy love story and hoping that something we've learned helps someone else.
Shout out to everyone who took a few moments out of their day to listen. We really appreciate your support and hope something from today's episode encouraged you, challenged you, or helped you reflect.
Is there someone in your life who consistently gives more than expected or makes a lasting impact? Take a moment to show take a moment to show them appreciation, whether through your time, encouragement, support, or simply saying thank you. And if you'd like, share their story with us. You can message us on social media or email us at mockmedia4@gmail.com. You can also visit mockmediagroup.com to stay connected with everything happening with the Mocks. If you enjoy this content and would like to support the podcast, you can donate at buymeacoffee.com/mockmediagroup. Your support helps us improve the show, upgrade equipment, and continue creating consistent content. And don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode.
Thanks for joining us this week on ESaysPSays, your bi-weekly dose of Black. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Mock Media Group and ESaysPSays. The Mock Media is also on Substack, so sign up to get our bi-weekly or our weekly newsletter. Substack.com/@Mock Media Group. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and send us your comments or questions to social media or our email, mockmediagroup4@gmail.com.
And to get in touch with our guest, you can find him at yourfirejourney.coach, and his email is michael@yourfirejourney.com. And you can locate his budgeting tool, ynab.com, YNAB, also known as You Need a Budget. See you in 2 weeks.
1, 2, 3, 4.